Hello artists, artists, and art appreciators. My name is Regina, or Art of Lore, and I have a special video today. It is this resin art jewelry kit thing. So I've been wanting to get into resin for a while, but it's kind of expensive, tends to be on the toxic side, so you need a lot of aeration anyways. So I found this at the dollar store. Well, the $5 store. It was $5. And I don't like buying cheap art supplies normally. I'm not really like a cheap, crappy art supply buyer because I feel like I won't use them. But I decided that since I've been wanting to get into resin for a while, and this seems like an easy gateway into resin, I would try it out. Now I have no idea if this works. Everything on the cover of this looks like it was digitally made. Like someone digitally made these little things. So they don't even have like real pictures, I guess, of like what you're supposed to be making on this box. I'm a little questioning, but we're gonna see if it works. Anyway, so let me just open the box and I'll talk about it as I open it. Also, this box is for ages 8+. Which I find a little bit questioning. I got it when I was with my aunt's kids, and one of them is 8 years old. And I told her, although she said that she was old enough to play with it, I was like, I don't know if I would let an 8-year-old play with resin. Just because it can, my understanding is it's somewhat toxic. Okay, so the most important parts of this are the resin, of course. Probably $5 worth of resin right here is a thing that my grandfather said when he saw this box. So we've got 25 milliliters of hardener, 50 milliliters of resin. And I think the mixing cup is in milliliters. Yeah, so I think this is just like a 1-to-2 ratio of resin to hardener. The thing about this is that the density is hopefully the same on both of these, because my understanding is normally resin is mixed in a 1-to-2 ratio, but by weight. So I'm gonna get my scale out and we're gonna measure these densities in case there are any errors, but we'll see. We'll do that in a minute. Okay, so we've got mica powder, which by the way was like all over the box, like there were little flakes of it everywhere and it was quite glittery. But like it looks like fine, you know, it's like normal mica. We've got red, blue, yellow, green. And that's pretty normal and everything. We've got tiny metal things for earrings. And then we've got some long stretchy fishing wire, which, oh, I bet my cat would love to play with this. This would be great for playing with your cat, or I guess a necklace, although it's kind of hideous. So, like, I don't know why you'd want to use that for a necklace. And then here, I kind of messed one of these up when I first opened it. We've got like a silver, oh, nope, I'm messing it. No! Sheet of silver foil, which I assume isn't real silver, but I don't want to mess it up any further anyways. And then this sheet, which is like a gold foil, which I don't know if that's real gold either. But it doesn't really matter because I probably won't use those because I think they're kind of ugly. Like I don't see why that would go with the mica powders really. And then it actually comes with pairs of gloves, so that's nice. These are some nice plastic gloves, latex. I don't know what these are, but they're gloves. And then we've got what appear to be silicone molds. So we've got mushroom, cherry, and butterfly. The thing is, on the box, it shows the cherries having 2 different colors, and I don't think that's possible with the ingredients that you're given, because once you pour it in here, it's just gonna fill up the mold. So like, you're not gonna be able to make the cherry different colors. So the box is just lying to you on most counts. And then on top of that, we've got these, which are beads, I think. So they've got like a little stick, and that stick seems to be the hole through which will like be through the bead. And then, yeah, you just kind of have to pour the resin in through this tiny little thing, which seems quite difficult. Great. So we've got all that together. And then here are the instructions. Forgot to mention this tiny piece of sandpaper they gave us. Okay, so I've got my scale here. This is my tiny food scale. I use it to weigh my snake, and it's got grams on it. It goes to 1/10 of a gram, which, by the way, I don't trust scales that don't show 1/10 of a gram. Just let it be known right here. This scale goes up to 3,000 grams or 3 kilograms. But it still has the 10th place because we'll be weighing very small amounts, so that's really important. The first thing I want to do is make sure I know the density of these. So the way that you can measure the density is, so this tiny cup has 5 milliliters, 10 milliliters, 15 milliliters. So we'll have to put in 5 milliliters of the resin, and then we'll weigh out the resin minus the tiny cup, which is like 2.7 grams. And if 5 milliliters of resin is the same as 5 grams, then that's exactly a density of 1 gram per milliliter. And we're just making sure that the ratios of these are the same. And then if we have any issues with doing a 1-to-2 ratio, like a 1-to-2 ratio of volume, we're going to do a 1-to-2 ratio of weight, so by scale. And then if that works, then also I can use other containers to mix this resin in instead of just this tiny cup, because I only have one of these, but I could get a different tiny cup and I could mix like a different color in there. Wait, let me go ahead and read the instructions real fast. So I think I'm gonna go with red mushrooms as my first choice, and then if we have any left over, we'll fill up the beads. Don't know how much resin will be needed to fill up these. And so this is a 2-to-1 ratio. It says by volume, so I'm gonna do volume for now. And I'm just gonna go ahead and put on a glove, 1 glove. So that's gonna be 10 milliliters of resin, and then I will record the weight, and then we're gonna put in 5 more milliliters of hardener. And then we're going to mix it with the popsicle stick. Okay, we'll just do it. Let's just do it. Let's just see. Okay, that looks like 10 milliliters. So we now have 11.3 grams. I didn't tear the scale because I forgot. So we'll do 11.3 minus 2.8. That's gonna be 5 milliliters of hardener. So we're gonna get up to 15 milliliters. I accidentally dripped down the outside a little, so I added a few extra drops. But now we have 15.4. These are actually separated quite a lot. You can't really see it on camera because the camera's up there. 15.4, 15.3 after I wiped it off. Okay, now we mixy, and apparently we have about 30 minutes after we mix it for it to work. Mixy. I'm gonna go ahead and take the mica. Oh, okay, well, that was that. There's now mica everywhere. That's great, I love that. I love that for us. Mica powder everywhere. Okay, it's all in the air. Trying to not get that on my camera and also not breathe it in. It can't be good for me. Yeah, I really don't think you're supposed to breathe mica in. So I'm gonna have to be more careful next time. Okay, well, that small amount of mica really made a big difference, it seems. I shouldn't have done this on my scale. Now I've made the scale all sparkly. Now that I've messed up my scale. Is that enough mica? I don't know. We have so much mica in these tiny packages. Okay, poofing. Stop it. Stop it. I don't want that. I'm kind of worried it will mess with the resin hardening. I guess there's nothing to do but pour it in this tiny mold. The mold's not very flat, which is kind of annoying. It got kind of warped. I could pour it by dumping it out, but I'm using this tiny stick instead for fun. Yeah, I'm gonna need to figure out a way to like hold the sides down, because I feel like it might flood out of the mold at this rate. Probably should have figured that out before I started doing this. I have this pair of pliers. And maybe I have another pair of pliers I can use for this side. I want it to be like very level. Okay. Sorry if you can't see this super well on camera. There's not an easier way for me to do it. I like using the little stick. It feels a little bit more controlled than if I was just pouring it in. So mushroom successfully filled. Next is using, I guess, the rest of this, which we have quite a lot left, to make some beads over here. I don't know how this will go though, because it doesn't seem like it'll be easy to get the beads to fill. Maybe I just need to let it drip in through the side and leave some space for the air. Actually, yeah, I think that works out better. I'm not smelling anything. I don't have the best sense of smell, so hopefully there aren't like a bunch of chemicals going into my brain right here. But like, it doesn't smell like really strongly or anything. I'm very tempted to smell it, but I know from chemistry class that you're not supposed to just smell things like that. Oh, I covered this one's hole. Okay. It seems to work best if I just push it in through the side and let it drip down. Yeah, the trick is with these tiny little ones, you really have to just put it in like very close to the side. If I had like a syringe, that would be helpful. I still have a lot of this left, but I don't have like any other molds to use it with. I think I have like a decent amount. I didn't want to do like the cherries or the butterfly because I wanted to do other colors with them, but maybe I should just go ahead and do the cherries and then the thing is it takes 72 hours to harden, so this is going to be like a several day long video. I mean, it says fully cure, so like in theory it should be partially cured. I mean, they said we have a work time of 30 minutes, so I feel like it should be at least cured enough maybe for me to take out in like a few hours. I don't really know. Okay, so I did forget to perform the unmolding of the mushrooms and the beads on camera for this first batch, but we're gonna do another batch now, and I did record that part, so just keep watching for that towards the end of this. First, I'm gonna show you me mixing another batch of resin. It's the same amount of resin, but I'm going to split it up into 3 different containers in order to get different colors and be able to pour them at the same time. I added a little bit of extra hardener this time, I think. This resin combination is it's like appropriately made for a package this size and for like this amount of simplicity. It seems to me you won't have to worry about being like the most accurate with it. Obviously, at the beginning of this video, when I was recording this, I was super worried the first time that it would not harden at all. I was watching that like a hawk all day, seeing if it was hardening at all, which you're not really supposed to touch it while it's hardening, but I kept poking it. It turned out alright. And I did make sure to check to see if the densities were the same, because I wanted to see if it was also a 1:2 ratio by weight. And it does not need a 1:2 ratio by weight. It seems that the hardener is a little less dense. The hardener was actually 0.8 grams per milliliter, according to my calculations, where the volumes like would have been slightly off, but the resin was like slightly higher at 0.85 based on my calculations, which again, the volume isn't that great, but the hardener's almost definitely lighter because it floated on top of the resin when I poured it. But basically that just shows that it's not 1:2 by mass, which like the instructions do say by volume, but I didn't necessarily trust that because I know that resin can be super finicky, and because this kit is so cheap, I was not confident at all that it would work. I've seen like people fail with like really expensive types of resins and gels and all that. But yeah, this kit does in fact work, and you could probably do it even if you are not like a precise person. I used to work in a microbiology lab where we measured things out in like milliliters and grams depending on like the product, and so I'm used to like a very high level of precision. Final ratio was 1 to 2.12 by mass, which is about 4% off of a 1:2 ratio. So there was like 4% more resin, I believe, than there would have been if it was a precise 1:2 ratio of hardener to resin. I hope that you enjoyed that math lesson. I mean, not really math lesson, but you know, I hope you enjoyed me talking about math here. So the colors that I decided to go with, as you can see, are blue, and then making a purple out of red and blue pigments and yellow, which I then later turned to green by adding green pigment in. And I did want to try something like the box, where you put the like yellow and the purple in at the same time to make the mushroom. Hopefully the mushroom stem would be the same color as the top. So you'll see in the reveal how that turned out. After doing these 2 sessions, I think that I can confidently say that about 15 milliliters is how much you need to fill up just that like one mold with the mushroom, cherry, and butterfly, and you'd have enough for maybe like a few beads, because the amount that I make here is enough to fill up all of these molds. But of course I had already filled part of the cherry, and so I think I got about like 6 or 7 beads out of this. The blue plus red making purple, that's never going to be like a very clean color combination, because it's not a purple pigment, so what you're just seeing is a mixture of the blue and the red, so it looks a little bit muddy. I do like how the color turned out. It's just, always be warned that like if you're mixing 2 pigments, it's not going to be as vibrant as if you got like a pigment of that color to begin with. But these were the colors that I had with this kit. I will also say, like, I was a little hesitant about mixing too much mica into everything, so I didn't put super a lot of mica into the yellow. Overall, I have extra mica of all of the different colors. I also have extra resin and hardener that I haven't used, but I think even if I use that, I would still have leftover colors with like the 4 different packets of colors that I used. Okay, so I filled up my molds, and overnight I like let them sit, and then I managed to peel them out of their little containers. The cherries, I will say, they turned out really well. The stems, of course, are still a little bit red, but I put the green all on the back just to kind of give it more structural integrity. But from the front, they look like great cherries. So essentially, while removing these from the container, and then once I flipped them over, I realized that there were some flaws in the creation of these. The pigments did not mix as well on the bottom as they did on the top. And I did try and drag like a little pin through the butterfly wings to try and make like, I don't know, like swirls and like get some of the pigment to the bottom. In fact, you'll remember that I poured the yellow on the bottom before pouring the like blue purple on the bottom. I actually think I know what happened here. I added only a little bit of yellow pigment so that I could add green on top, and I think that made the yellow resin a lot lighter, and all the particles floated to the top. Or like all the resin that had that in it floated to the top. I don't think that it's the yellow particles specifically being lighter, but it also could be that. But you see, like, with the mushroom, essentially all of the purple ended up on the bottom of the mold, which turns out to be the top of the mushroom. And it also makes a lot of sense because the purple mushroom, having both red and blue pigments, just had a lot more pigment in it. So I think that the purpley resin just ended up being heavier. So the cherries worked out, the mushrooms didn't work out so much. And the butterflies, I think the color combinations just weren't very good. I don't really like the red and blue. And also the gold didn't show up. So, of course, I decided that I would paint them afterwards. I'd already decided that, but I knew that I would need to do a little bit more painting than I had initially planned to because they didn't turn out as good as I thought that they would. First, I sanded them just to get like a rougher surface. I didn't sand them all over, but I sanded the parts that I was planning on painting the most on because I wanted there to be like more of a surface to paint on. I felt like the resin was probably a little bit smooth and the paint might peel off. So I used a really rough sandpaper to sand the ones that I was going to paint a lot, and also the back of the pieces. Obviously, actually, I don't know if this is obvious. If you know anything about resin, resin sort of shrinks as it cures, so every piece has sort of a concave gap in the bottom. That's actually why I filled the back of the cherries in with green, was because the red had sort of a concave back, and I felt like it would have a little bit more structural integrity if I just filled that concave area with green. Luckily, I have some sparkly pigmented acrylic paints that I could use in order to paint these. I did start off with a white base for the red mushrooms, just so they'd have a few layers of white, because the sparkly pigment paints are quite sheer. This red one is just a classic Amanita, or fly agaric as it's called. I was talking to someone who was Danish, and he said that in Danish they call it fly mushroom, which directly translates. And so I was like, that's funny because we call it fly agaric in English. And then we looked it up, and agaric just means mushroom. And the reason it's called fly agaric is because it was used to, I think, kill flies as like an insecticide historically, which is really interesting. Don't eat mushrooms like this. Mario teaches you to eat poisonous mushrooms, and you should not do it. If a mushroom is brightly colored, that means it's because it's telling you that it is poisonous usually. My father is a mushroom hunter, and he has taught me a lot about which mushrooms are edible. I don't really like mushrooms, but most of the ones that are edible are not brightly colored, except for the chicken of the woods mushroom, which is bright orange and yellow, although it should not be confused with other bright orange mushrooms, which are poisonous. Luckily, most mushrooms that are poisonous, they won't kill you, they'll make you hallucinate. So, yeah, I think that's like all my mushroom facts, so I'm kind of running out of things to say. I tried to mimic the gold and like blue patterns on the back sides of the mushrooms and butterfly, just using my gold paint. And the cherries I didn't paint because I felt like they turned out really good on their own and they didn't need any sort of fiddling with. I considered drawing like cute smiley faces on them, but I felt like it was just a bit much. So, in order to replicate the markings on the butterfly, like the blue, I had added a lot of gold, but I wanted to add like more blue back in and like blend it a little bit better, so I just took the mica and I mixed it with my I mixed the blue mica with my sparkly white paint to make like a sparkly blue paint. It actually worked way better than I thought. It looked pretty similar after I mixed it all up. Although unfortunately it did kind of waste some of the mica because there wasn't any way to save that. It actually might still be over there on my desk, but it might have dried out because those really heavily sparkly paints, they dry out super quickly. Much quicker than like the other acrylics, like that white acrylic would. But it helped me because I could then paint on the blue as if I had properly poured the resin, or the resin had been the same density or whatever. But yes. Okay, one thing I wanted to say was when I took the red beads out of the mold, they were still soft because it was still the same day. It was about 12 hours later. So I like squeezed them out that night while I was, watching TV or something, and peeled them out of the package, and they were a little bit like warped and stuff, but they weren't too hard to get out. But these other ones that I left completely overnight for like over 12 hours, they were completely hardened by the time like the 16 or 20 hours later that I managed to take them out. They were so hard that they really hurt my fingers when I was trying to get them out. So that's like a thing to be warned about, is like if you're trying something like this, try to take your beads out when they're not like rock hard, because this did cure successfully, obviously, but if you get to it at like the stage where the resin is a little bit softer, it's definitely easier to take out of the mold. I didn't end up cleaning up all of the beads because they were just like so messed up. I would have to do like a lot of sanding and everything, so I just cleaned up like a representative sample of the beads. I would say overall, it's like for each bead, there's one side that's like beautiful because it's perfect. It's the bottom of the bead mold. But then the top part, where I had to like sand it and stuff and like get all of the little bits up, it's not so nice. So like, would these beads be usable? I mean, like in theory, technically, yes, but they are kind of ugly. And also I couldn't get the resin to like swirl in anything. All of the resin beads basically have like one color that pooled on the bottom. Either the like colors split, like rose the top, like one rose the top and one didn't. It's something like that. But I cleaned at least one of each color so that I would have like a slight rainbow. And then some of the beads are like dual colors, so I put those in between as different sections of the rainbow. Oh yeah, I also gave all of the beads and everything after I painted the acrylic on them a like glossy coat. I think it's actually my matte coat, but if you put it on thick enough, it's glossy anyways. Just to seal in the acrylic paint, an important step to keep in mind. And then they actually give you these little metal hoops. I think it's like they give you 6 metal hoops and 6 earring chains with the like, they give you 6 metal hoops and 6 earring making pieces. I don't know what they're called, but like hooks that you stick into earrings. So you can make them yourself, but I just use the ones that they have in the kit. They're nice little rings. They seem like they're fine. I don't have pierced ears, so I can't wear them anyways. And then I also used the like ugly stretchy wire. I don't really like this for bracelets or anything, but I decided to make a little bracelet. I used some silver beads in between, and then I hadn't cleaned up enough like of the resin beads, so I ended up using some like extras that I already had lying around. Thank you for watching. If you've made it to the end of the video, I appreciate it. These are my models because I don't have pierced ears, so I put the earrings on them for display purposes. This kit worked really well. I was surprised for only $5, an actual resin kit. Not that I'm advertising it or anything, but I'm just impressed that it worked. And I'm excited to do more resin stuff in the future, hopefully, so follow if you're interested in that. And thank you, have a nice day, and goodbye.